Hey everyone, CJ here. Since I've done a video on Isekai, I thought I might as well do another one. So let's make an Isekai D&D adventure campaign that doesn't suck. I will be speaking from my own experience. I have run a few Trapped in Another World campaigns and I have begun to see what works and what don't. Okay, some clarification. When I use the word Isekai in this video, I don't mean specifically anime-inspired setting. It can be. I have been looking into tons of them and I've made video about it. But it can also be something like R.A. Salvatore's Spear Wielder's Tale, which were some of my most favorite isekais growing up. Or, if you're literarily inclined, it could be historically inspired isekai, like Mark Twain's Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. Now, what should a D&D isekai be about? Normal people from our world falling into Faerun and find their own character sheets? Medieval D&D characters transported into our world and can now use smartphones as their spellcasting focus? Well, it is up to you really. It can even take the usual transported into a video game angle, but nobody can deal any damage unless they attack on their turn. A clash of D&D game systems, if you will. That could be fun. Or it doesn't have to be related to D&D at all. Use an anime or other video game setting. It's really up to you. But whatever gimmick you're running with, you should watch out for some of the most common game-breaking elements, and I'm going to tell you what to look out for. But before we do that, let's ask a very simple question. What is the point of running an isekai campaign anyway? It's a good question, isn't it? When you are sitting around a table, playing D&D, imagining yourself in another world, metagaming a bit, joking about fantasy or sci-fi tropes, that's practically the isekai experience, isn't it? So what is the difference? First of all, it's the roleplay. It gives you more freedom with the creation of the character's background. Not everyone is familiar with Forgotten Realms or other official settings, like Eberron. So this lets your players roleplay someone they're more familiar with. Or if they just don't know how to roleplay a medieval person, he or she can just be themselves. For veterans who are really deep into their role-playing rabbit hole, they can even onion skin their characters. They can be a former citizen of Night City who got transported back in time to 1920s, but whose mind got swapped into the body of a deep one by the Migos and is now working as a Hollywood extra for the special effects department. Legacy player characters, folks, you gotta love them. The second benefit is the freedom to metagame. This can actually be really good. It creates a more collaborative experience where players can look at each other's character sheet without breaking out of character. And they can approach problems like cooperative board games. So if you want to run an isekai campaign, there are a few things that you need to look out for that will make or break your game. I will cover them one by one, and here is number 1. Entry. How do your players stumble into the new world? I am not just talking about the method, like using a bathtub, a portal, or other devices they use to get there, but I am talking about the circumstance. Have you ever wondered why there are so many isekais using reincarnation as a method of transportation? That's because death provides a closure to their life in their original world. Once transported, they don't have to think about returning, since everyone would have accepted that the main character is gone forever, so they can focus on the new world completely without thinking about friends and family back home. Finding the way home can be a very powerful motivator. You can use it as a trump card to compel your players to do something drastic, but it can also be a tremendous distraction, especially in the early sessions, because they won't be willing to make connections with the new world and its inhabitants if they know that there are people back home who are worried sick about them. Your players would realistically and justifiably roleplay as someone who is desperate to go back home, so it is not their fault if they can't focus on the quest at hand. There are a few other ways to solve this problem besides just killing the characters and reincarnate them, or make them hate the world where they came from. If you want returning home to remain an option for your player characters, here are a few things that you can do. Partial memory loss. If they can't remember where home is, they won't get too distracted early on. Danger. If they are in great danger, then they would be too busy worrying about themselves to worry about home. There is also the obvious goal method. If they know that they need certain amount of magical energy to power up the machine to send them back home, then they won't be too desperate to return home immediately. Of course, you can even workshop the circumstance with the players and find a method that will allow them to focus on the world for the first few sessions. Maybe their family is on a long vacation or something, or they could have even came to the world together with them. Number 2. Setting. The most popular isekais are the ones that skillfully blends the familiar and the new. To be honest, that's what all fiction is all about anyway. But the thing is, if everything in the world is new and unfamiliar to them, then you will be missing out on the strength of the isekai genre. Isekai is not just a fish out of water type of story. It is about how a character would react in a given place and situation. Sometimes there is a degree of power fantasy and moral conundrums too. If you have overwhelming power, or if you are the chosen one, how would you react to it? Are you just going to do what's expected of you? Or are you going to abuse your power? Those are some interesting predicaments you can put your players in. You also shouldn't forget your world building. If you're doing a comedy isekai, then sure, you can get away with some shoddy world building. You can even purposely make it so bad that your players can pick it apart and laugh at its farcical nature. But if you want your players to take the world seriously, then you've gotta do proper world building. I've done a video on world building, so you can check out the link in the doobly-doo if you want. Number 3. People. The problem with isekais is that there is greater distance between the inhabitants of the world and the people who are transferred to it. I'm not talking about physical proximity, but emotional connection. Why would the players have to care about these people if they're never going to see them ever again when they go back home? The emotional distance is even greater if they are the equivalent of some dumb, uneducated peasants. In general, creating really dumb and ignorant inhabitants of the world can be a pretty bad idea. This might get too real for you, but in real-world politics, we generally have less empathy for dumb people and consider them to have less agency. That is also why in bigoted propagandas, the opponents is usually depicted as dumb, regardless of evidence. So the point is, if you don't want your players to turn the inhabitants of the world into expendable fodders the players don't care about rescuing, don't make them too dumb. The other way of getting around this, instead of just making them mensa geniuses, is to actually give them strong personalities, or make them the players' emotional equals. Give them dreams, ties, bonds, and complexity. They may not be smart or sophisticated, but remind the players that they have feelings, emotions, and ideals too. The anime Overlord does this very well. The inhabitants of his new world are virtual insects in comparison to him and even his minions, in terms of power and intelligence. They can hardly be considered an obstacle to any of his goals. But to make all those characters personable and make us care for them, even some of the lowliest goblins are given personalities and quirks. They are expendable in the grand scheme of things, but you wouldn't want them to die, because these goblins are such good bros. Number 4. Difficulty. In terms of power difference between your players' characters and the inhabitants of the world, your players' characters can be equivalent in power or they can be godlike. It doesn't matter. If they want to revel in a bit of power fantasy, sure, you can indulge them. You just need to find a place to set the balance of their fail and win condition. There are plenty of ways to defeat your players that doesn't involve killing them. Look, as a DM, I find that plainly killing the players' characters can get boring after a while, so I always keep coming up with new ideas to make them suffer. Sure, they can be powerful like Superman, but if they can't use their power to save their favorite NPCs from execution, they would have failed. Just raise the bar to success proportionally to their power level. Be creative. Maybe make it their task to stop magical black holes from wiping out the world, or something like that. If they fail, they don't even have to die, but they will suffer eternal loneliness being trapped in lightless abyss forever, and nobody can send them home because all the inhabitants who can create the machine to do that are all dead. Find new ways to make your players suffer, folks. Be creative. I do it all the time, and I've never been bored since. Number 5. Cheats. In Isekai, cheats are interesting conventions. It is that special thing that makes the main character more special than the rest of the inhabitants of the other world. It can be just knowledge in history or even some special ability that only the players have. It can also be a really fun set of special rules to homebrew. Maybe their special cheat ability is that they can use pencil and eraser to change the stats of their enemies or their own character sheets. It is up to you, but make sure that the rules are clear and give it limitations. As according to Brandon Sanderson's second law of magic, the limitations of a magic system are more interesting than its capabilities. What the magic can't do is more interesting than what it can. So, for example, if they don't know the real name of an NPC, they can't change his stats, because the DM couldn't find the stat block of that creature. It can also lead into dramas when they realize that their friendly NPCs turned out to be not who he claimed to be. Number 6. Last thing to be wary of. Politics. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a powerful godlike being among poor uneducated simpletons must be in want of an empire. Not Jane Austen. I play with lots of people from different walks of life, okay? I wouldn't be surprised if someday I have to entertain the idea of establishing a vegano-fascist Randian commune empire. Yeah, the thing about politics is that it is always very divisive. And when people want to create their own country, they will often create one that is closely aligned to their own political ideals. And it is usually quite contentious, especially when there are players with different political beliefs around the table. When this happens, and your players don't want to compromise, you may have to end up splitting the game and let them each run their own countries. But it is not even guaranteed that it will keep everyone happy. Hey, how come a theocracy get bonus to their citizens' happiness roll? Hey, how come communism get bonus to their production roll? There is just no end to it. Another way to be fair is to just leave real-world politics out of the game. Only the setting's political system is acceptable, but the players get to influence the rightful rulers, and they can make them their puppets, or work within the system and they get to convert the kingdom to their preferred political system when the campaign is over. Also, remember that despite being called a pen and paper RPG, I don't think that you should be surprised that there are people who prefer adventuring rather than doing paperwork and taxes for an imaginary kingdom. Sure, political games can be fun if that is what everyone has signed up for. I could do a whole video about it, but be careful of thematic changes if not everyone is on board. If 5 players signed up for an Isekai and 2 players wanted to turn it into a political campaign, then you should get everyone to talk about it and recalibrate the campaign's direction. Okay, those are the things that you need to look out for when creating an Isekai campaign. Also, think about what kind of story do you want to tell with the genre you're using. A great story is a story that stands on its own despite its genre. But the perfect story is a great story that cannot be told in any other medium. So think carefully if Isekai is the right genre for the campaign story you want to tell. Come to think of it, it kinda applies universally to all fiction, doesn't it? Anyway, remember to like and subscribe if you have enjoyed the video. I've also got a JoJo-inspired new D&D class that you can check out in the link below. Doobly-doo. CJ, over and out.